My name is Sokari Ekine. I'm originally from Nigeria. I'm a researcher, a writer, a blogger, and most of all a human rights social justice activist. I use my writing as an activist.
Can you share one success story on mobile activism in Africa?
I think there's many success stories. I mean, some of the case studies are to do with campaigns, and the others are to do with particular development of technologies. I mean, one of the technologies I would like to talk about is the Freedom Phone, which brings together mobile technology with broadcast technology. And what it does, it enables anyone to create and broadcast their own content. The exciting thing about the Freedom Phone is it was developed in Africa. That was the first thing. The second thing is it can be replicated anywhere. You could use it here in Germany. Anybody who wants to create content and broadcast can use it. The third thing is the platform is an open source platform. It's relatively easy to use. It's simply a database. And on the database you record audio clips in MP3 or WAV files. And these can be accessed either by phone or by SMS or by a callback if the person can't pay. And it's activated by interactive voice response.
So in which situations may the Freedom Phone be used?
I think in a whole range of situations. For example, you can use it in service provision. So if you want to put out information for people on health issues, on an epidemic, say for example, or just HIV/AIDS information or information around malaria and so on. You can use it for that. If you want to use it as an entertainment site, so where people can recite their poetry, or there could be a story of the day, or it could be used to provide information, update information. So if there's an election taking place, you can use it to phone in and find what is the latest information, the latest update on information. Or it could be simply used as a community radio with a variety of information and news. But the good thing about it also, it enables the users, the listeners, to text in or leave a voice message about what they want to hear. So I could say, look, I want to hear a story about this. I want information about, I've heard that there's some baby milk which is out of date. I want some more information about that. And then you, if you chose to do it, could then provide that information.
Why is mobile so important in Africa?
Mobiles are important because in Africa at the moment, the internet connection, in Europe and the Americas, we all use the internet. That is our primary source now of getting information. But in Africa, the connectivity is still not very good. It's expensive. It's, roughly maybe between 5 to 10% of the population have access to it. Whereas mobile phones, across the continent, there's probably maybe 30 to 40 to 50%, depending where you are. In some countries, 80 to 90% of people have access to a mobile phone. They may not own a mobile phone, but they have access. So if you want to organize people, if you want to disseminate information or news, then the mobile phone is an excellent tool because most people have access to it.
You have also criticized that there's a huge hype about mobile activism in Africa, and you have criticized this hype as being overestimating the importance of mobile too. So why that?
Yeah, absolutely. Because what's taking place is taking place in pockets. And this is my comment about creating an indigenous digital divide between those that have access to aid and funding and those that don't. And what's happening is there are pockets, and I could name those pockets. In particular, Kenya is one, Uganda is another, maybe Ghana to another extent. But there are pockets where this technology is being used extensively, and there's a lot of development and a lot of innovation. But there are also pockets where it's not being used. and pockets where it's not even heard about. And people find it very difficult to access the platform, even though you don't need the internet, you need a computer, a software. People don't have access to that. So my point is that when you read about it in the press, it's as if it's happening everywhere. And everybody's getting very excited. And I'm just saying that we need to stop, calm down, and actually look at the reality. And the reality is not as widespread as you think, but there are pockets. So if you go to Kenya, you'll think, my God, this is happening everywhere. But it's not. It's not happening in Sudan. It's not happening in Eritrea. That's my point.
The Freedom Phone is open source. What's the special opportunity open source and free licenses like Creative Commons provide for Africa?
Well, it just makes things being much cheaper. I mean, that's the biggest thing. One of the biggest issues around using any technology or software, hardware or software, is the cost. And that's why mobile phones, because now there are some very, very cheap basic mobile phones, not smartphones, but basic mobile phones. You just text and take a text and use voice. So open source kind of complements that because people don't have to go out and pay. So for example, if we take the Freedom Phone, it's free. It's open source. Anybody who's got a computer and a little bit of access for 10, 15 minutes in order to download the software. Once you've done that, then you don't have anything to pay for that. And so your only cost is actually the time that you spend, little time you spend on the internet. I mean, there are other costs in the project, but in terms of the actual platform, there is no cost. So I think that, and also open source just fits in very well with open development, with giving citizens more power, giving them more access to information, and all of those things which we all want, whether we're in Africa or we're in Europe, we all want to have much more participation in what is taking place.
Do you think mobile can provide an utopia for Africa, can provide an idea of a better future for Africa? And where do you see mobile in Africa in 10 years?
I don't think any technology can provide a better future. I think a better futures have to be provided by people. People are the ones that lead social and political change. What we need to remember is the technology is a tool. It's like a pencil. But this is a tool of our time. The pencil was a tool of previous times. And it can make life much more easier. It can make it easier to measure what is going on and to observe, but the actual will to make the social change has to come from the people, because I could just as well use the technology to cause havoc or cause chaos. So the social change and the political will has to come from us, and I have to decide, I'm going to use the Freedom Phone to do this, and I'm going to ask lots of people to come on board and support it. So I don't think it can create utopia. What I think it can do, it can facilitate it in the sense that if you want to do that, the technology will help you do that. But if you don't, then obviously it's not much use. And I think that in 10 years' time, I think we will have much better internet access by in 10 years' time. So I think like Europe, many of us will not be using laptops. We will be using smartphones like the iPhone to access the internet, both here in the West and also in Africa as well.
So you see a closing of the worldwide digital gap?
Yeah, I think there's going to be a closing because they're laying fiber optic cables in Africa, which is going to make a big difference. But we have to remember the issue of language and the issue of literacy and the issue of poverty, which is associated. I mean, poverty, I think, is one of the biggest crimes because really there's no need for people to be poor. There's enough land to feed everybody. It's just that we're not equal consumers. Some people consume more than others, and that's one of the problems that causes poverty. If poverty isn't addressed and literacy isn't addressed, then change is going to be much more difficult because you can't use a smartphone to write if you're not literate. So there has to be changes. We must not forget that the governments of our countries also have a role they also have a responsibility to educate.
Do you believe that mobile technology can actually help decreasing poverty, can actually help increasing literacy and help educating people?
Only in the sense that as a way of informing people of maybe of the benefits, but it's difficult. I mean, I know that there are a number of mobile phone projects which use the mobile to teach literacy, but I mean, personally, I just don't think that's going to work. I don't think that's sustainable, and I would, the money that is being spent there, I would prefer to see village community literacy classes being held, and I think that would be far more appropriate. Whether mobile phones can end poverty, I don't know, because poverty these are structural issues. They're issues of how we relate to each other, they're issues of exploitation and ownership and so on. So unless those are changed, unless we actually change the working conditions of those people mining in the DRC, you're not going to change their poverty just because you have a mobile phone. What you need to do is to use your mobile to campaign against those people who are exploiting people in those work situations, like I don't want to name companies because I don't want to get sued, but those mobile companies that use the components that are sourced in those areas. That's what changes. And mobiles can help, but they're not going to, the work has to be done by us. We can't just say, oh, mobiles, no. And they're not always appropriate in every situation.
Do you think there's also a possible downside? Do you think there could be a danger related to the use of mobile phones?
Well, I think in any situation with any technology, as we know, the same technology that, not that I support nuclear electricity power, but that's, nuclear power gives electricity. Supposedly it's a good thing, but nuclear bombs kill people. It's not the technology, it's what you do with that technology.
Thank you very much for this interview.
You're welcome.